Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is David Robinson. He's the president of Cloud ERP and acting managing director for U.S. Public Services at SAP. Good to have you with us.
It's great to be with you. Thank you.
And the cloud question rolls on and on for federal agencies, shutdown or no shutdown. You have to keep services up and running. And a lot of agencies still to this day kind of define success as, well, we got the application into the cloud and it's running. Is there a better definition of success than that we got an application from here to there?
Certainly. When we think about cloud, certainly cloud comes at different stages. And as we've seen cloud computing become not just something that's a benefit, but really it's a requirement to operate at a global enterprise and certainly at a government level. Just simply moving the applications and an application estate into the cloud certainly has benefits. It takes out cost and it provides a lot of mitigation of risk. But to truly unlock the power of cloud, you have to refactor how the application estate is actually designed and developed and move away from on-premise applications and the supporting IT operating model that it takes to make those applications function. So to truly go through a transformation, it's well beyond just where you run it, it's how you run it and how you consume the applications.
And is there any application that can't be refactored, or can you pretty much go at all of your assets and let's say make them better suited for cloud?
Well, certainly cloud is a great enabler. There are certain attributes of cloud-born, cloud-native applications that really benefit things like collaboration, access to compute power, elasticity. And so this refactoring isn't limited to any line of business or any type of application. It really is a great way to reinvent how IT serves the mission, how IT serves a lot of different business processes.
And that's a good point, because often technical departments, IT departments have their own reasons for updating things that may be invisible or not known to the rest of the organization.
Sure.
Because they got to keep things running. But there's also that need to align what you're doing in IT with what it is the missions or the programs require.
Certainly.
And so there are some good strategies to make sure that alignment happens.
What's interesting, we've done a lot of research over, many years of customers moving these application estates into the cloud. And where we've seen the greatest impact is on not just, again, where the applications run, but how they are actually consumed. To really look at an enterprise estate and understand where are the different capabilities that benefit from native cloud service architecture, native cloud service integration, interoperability, and really making sure that all of the benefits that come through an optimized cloud delivered estate are really part of your business strategy enabled by IT. I also think about it in the context of cloud is a great equalizer, and a lot of times over a long period of time, IT becomes the organization that makes applications be available and function. That's important. But what cloud native architecture and cloud services and cloud capabilities should ultimately do is close the proximity gap between the technology and the business. And when we close that proximity gap, there's much more responsiveness, there's much more intimacy, and the ability to actually execute agile IT strategy in support of the business, in support of the mission, becomes much more natural rather than as secondary to the day-to-day IT work.
So by proximity, it's not, you don't mean physical proximity, you mean sort of mind share or looking at this in similar ways.
Correct. Thinking about a blending of what makes a really strong IT leader, what makes a very strong business leader. It's an IT leader that actually empathizes with and help consult with the business and the mission in a way that you can bring new ideas and be able to be very proactive rather than responsive. And from a business perspective, it's really understanding the power of IT to help reprioritize what are the business processes that will be most beneficial from the use of cloud delivered service, being able to bring those two mindsets together and make them work much more as one in a unified strategy. That's the ultimate promise and the ultimate unlock of value of cloud.
So that makes it incumbent upon, say, the mission or program owner, manager,
Sure.
to know what it is that should happen from the consumer standpoint, the citizen standpoint.
Certainly.
And he could then, or she could then say to IT, this is how it should come out from the user standpoint. And then IT has a much better understanding of what it is they need to engineer to have that happen.
Certainly. And it's always easier said than done, like a lot of things. But IT should not be a constraint. It should be an enabler. And when you have a business leader or a mission leader that understands what is the best way to bring value to a business process, to the communities that government serves, to the mission that government executes on, to think in that way. How is IT enabling something to happen that's lower cost and more performant and more compliant and secure, rather than to see IT as the constraint, as a limiting factor and a cost center? It's more of a mission enabler than a cost center. That's ultimately a gauge of how successful business and IT have unified their efforts. And that really comes from having applications that are designed for cloud service delivery, rather than applications that are designed around on-premise, on-premise architectures or on-premise requirements.
And that definitional process can probably work both ways, because IT could say, well, you've got all these subroutines and business processes built in. The way you're describing this, I'm just making this up, is these three you really don't need to do. Why are you doing that anymore? We can simplify this and still get you the result you want, which helps IT become more streamlined and cheaper, and also eliminates steps that are not necessary in the new era.
Well, it's interesting. We've heard for a long, long time, you have to do more with less. And it's always been through the context of budget constraints and the realities of kind of the world today. What's interesting, though, most recently through kind of what cloud has been able to unlock and enable from applications and technology, is that actually you have better outcomes with less cost. When you can engineer in the opportunity for applications to be interoperable, to be highly persistent, to be totally secure, that's work that doesn't have to be done by IT professionals. Our ability to reinvest that time, reinvest that work in intimacy with the business or intimacy with the mission, that's a much better return on investment, and it makes it possible to do more outcomes with better impact, with less commoditized cost, spending less money to make something just function, and spending more time and more investment in making things perform for better outcomes. And it's a reality now that we've seen start to happen over the last 2-3 years.
And that gets back to the original question of just not lifting and shifting, but actually refactoring so that you can take advantage of all those services
Correct.
that are in the cloud, and you don't have to do them anymore.
Correct. It's interesting, when we look back over the last 3 to 5 years, and we've seen a lot of customers that have gone through transformations. It's a big word used a lot. Transformation is not about upgrades. It's not about being on the latest tech stack, and it's not necessarily about consolidating applications. When you really transform, and that's the word I use a lot, I like that word a lot, you refactor. You refactor the IT operating model. What is the day-to-day work? What is the profile of an IT and business professional that uses technology? What does that look like in the current state? And how is it so much better, so much more cost-efficient, agile, and innovative in the future operating state? And to go through that transformation, it's a refactoring. And that is not something that's done at once. And it's not simply an upgrade to the technology. It takes deliberate decisions over a potentially multiple year period of time to continue to rethink how does IT and the mission of government, how do those stay very much unified, rather than let's have IT make sure applications function in support of a business requirement. That's old thinking.
Sure.
And that's what we've seen some successful organizations be able to unbreak, is that kind of that past operating model.
And you do see commercial organizations constantly evolving, but in the federal government, the virtues are often strong governance, compliance, risk avoidance, and security, which everybody shares in common. How do you get the culture, or how do you change things so that you still have all those qualities, but you can persistently or continuously innovate? And the ATO is another part of that kind of culture that they have.
Certainly, security is paramount. Security is not something that is a necessary step. It needs to be pervasive in every single part of how you design applications, how you build them, and how you actually deliver them, how they're consumed, and how they're maintained. So all of that comes under a blanket of security and operating rigor, and there's an enormous amount of benefit in leveraging cloud to make sure that that's a persistent, secure state of operating the applications that support government. But when you think about, and you talk a little bit about commercial and what we've seen in the private sector and how that translates to public sector, it's actually curious. When we look back over a population of customers, even if they upgraded to the latest versions of the applications, the majority of those customers were still running the same version of the application that they went live with. And what we've seen, especially in the last 12 to 24 months, is an acceleration of new features and functions and innovations, and certainly Gen AI is a driver of the acceleration. We've seen customers need to stay current and maintain a current state of operating. If the majority of time and work and money goes into maintaining an existing application estate or maintaining current state, that's investment that's not unlocking new requirements and innovations. So it's not just being on the latest version, it's being in a persistent, innovative operating state in which the architecture matters. What is a standard process that's highly commoditized and very predictable and very strategic, critical, mission oriented? How do you have that standard capability be available and secure all the time and be predictable? But how do you differentiate? How do you address a unique mission process? How do you respond to an unexpected change in the market? The architecture matters, and being able to balance standardization with differentiation and keep that as a persistent operating model allows enterprises, organizations, governments to always be persistently in that innovative state.
Right, and that's how you get to that mission impact that really matters.
Correct.
And because you have this notion of the total cost to innovate as opposed to the standard TCO, total cost to own.
You have to do both really, really well. There's been a long, long drive. Certainly the initial days of cloud was about taking out cost and providing the value of shared assets and bringing all that together in that kind of economic framework. That was really valuable, and that drove a lot of value. What we're seeing, though, is the balance between TCO and TCI. And this idea of total cost to innovate, for me, what it means is how quickly can you identify a new opportunity to deliver more value, more innovation, to respond to a mission requirement in a way that was unexpected? How do you cut the time and cost to realize that through your technology? If it takes 12 to 18 months every single time you want to introduce a new function or introduce a new process, and the rate of innovation change is every 6 to 12 months, you can see you've got an innovation supply chain problem. How do you make it faster, easier, rather than implementing new software? How do you activate new functions and features? And this is all part and parcel to that new IT operating model. How do you think differently? How does IT and business collaborate in a unified way differently so that you're being more proactive rather than reactive? And how do you get away from maintaining applications to curating innovation? And I think about this in a lot of ways. That's what separates those that leverage technology in the most future-proofed way rather than those that are in an operate and maintain mode. The go live of an application or of an application estate should be the starting point. It should not be the end point. It should be the starting point of how that enterprise, that government organization will operate going forward, always keeping pace with the very latest technology.
Yes, because then otherwise you end up like, like the IRS, which kind of innovated and went to, many, many years ago, and they changed the parameters as the tax code changes, but they're basically the same applications that have always been there. And there's so much potential that is not realized.
If the majority of money is spent on maintaining an old estate and maintaining what I like to think about as technical debt, These environments, as you add more and more customizations, as you add more and more non-standard functions, you add technical debt. And the challenge with technical debt is that eventually it becomes everything you spend money on. And there's no more money for innovation, extensibility, for all of the things that are so important to deliver on the mission. How do we, again, refactor how customers are using these technologies, these application estates, in a way that allows for the agency to introduce new capabilities to address requirements, but do so in a way that doesn't expand technical debt and keeps them in that persistent, innovative state.
And where does artificial intelligence come into all of this? I would think that it's a good application of it to look inwardly to see how can we upgrade this, how can we change this, if we want to do this, what kind of coding do we have to do, as well as an enabler for what the citizen or the consumer is coming at you with to help them.
Well, certainly,
there's like a two-sided.
There is. As actually, that's very, very valid. We see that a lot in the private sector and certainly more and more in the public sector. There's a lot of focus on generative AI and how AI is going to change outcomes. It's going to make new functions possible or improve the quality of applications, make decision-making much more effective. That's all true. But to your point, we're also seeing a lot of value directing that AI capability to the modernization efforts themselves. Looking at current application estates, many of which have been around for potentially decades, and how do you simplify the process of unpacking what is standard, what is customized, and how do you more quickly, through cost and risk managed Gen AI, to go ahead and unwind that technical debt and help better refactor. It supports that IT operating model in ways that weren't possible even 2-3 years ago.
And do you find agencies are kind of dawning, is this dawning on people, do you think?
I think we're at the earliest stages of that. I think we're at a point here where 2 years ago there was a lot of resistance to talking about that because there's a lot of concern, a lot of unknowns about Gen AI. Gen AI certainly is a broader topic. There's a lot of implications on policy. There's a lot of implications on the outcomes, and that's all true. That's all valid. What we're seeing, though, is still this technology provides value in that modernization effort. And yes, we're seeing the earliest stages of agencies, certainly in the private sector as well, put Gen AI to work to simplify IT operations and IT modernization efforts.
That might be that you have to confront the fact that the workforce requirements are simply going to change in the age of AI.
Well, correct. What's interesting is for a long, long time in the world of IT, there was a conversation about a shortage of resources. There was a conversation about not enough qualified personnel for the workload that was being predicted coming down the path. What we're seeing through the use of Gen AI is making those available resources more efficient, making those available resources much more impactful, and in a lot of ways improving not just the amount of work that IT professionals can work on, but also improving the quality of the outcomes of that work. So we're seeing that Gen AI in the short term is closing a natural talent gap, both in terms of skills and just frankly, people.
Yeah, and so then it comes down to a matter of just making sure you have the right training databases.
The training databases are something that's so important. I think that's one of the most important aspects of Gen AI overall, not just directed towards the IT function, but ensuring that the models that are used are using valid data, are being curated in a way that is compliant, but also is very much focused on the overall mission and policies of the organizations that choose to use those models. So.
All right, in 30 seconds,
Yeah.
when the government returns to normal operations.
When is that?
Who knows? Your guess is as good as mine, because even after the shutdown, it's still a CR. It's not even appropriations for the next fiscal year. What should IT departments do first?
That's a great question. I think that the current focus on modernization, I think about it in a kind of a multi-stage process, this idea of refactoring again. We're seeing an opportunity to consolidate systems that have been around for a long, long time, in many cases have redundant capabilities at the agency or department level. So I think there needs to be a real kind of doubling down on prioritizing consolidation efforts. Because when you can consolidate, you take out cost and risk, and you can repurpose that savings into modernization, and then that modernization effort makes the applications much more agile and innovative. So there's a relationship here at every step of that transformation.
All right. David Robinson is the president of Cloud ERP and acting managing director for U.S. Public Services at SAP. Great to have you with us.
It's great to be with you. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm Tom Temin, and you're watching Federal News Network. Let's go back to the studio now for more on the Industry Exchange Cloud.